Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Devil You Know, the Daredevil Podcast. I am Phil. Lilith is still on vacation, but we decided that I should do a review of Daredevil #1 because, of course, it's a #1. But I want you one better, kids, and I got you the man himself who wrote the issue himself, Mr. Saladin Ahmed. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
All right, but before I even get there, I just wanted to tell you, and again, one thing kept popping up because at first I was like, you know what? I read your Miles Morales run. I wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed your Miles Morales run.
Appreciate that.
So that was good. And then last week when I stopped at the store, I don't know if this was digital first, but I got Spine-Tingling Spider-Man #0.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this too because there's more of that coming too, right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's a horror comic starring Spider-Man, obviously, that we did originally. Juan Ferreira and I did originally for digital, and he really, my writing on it I think is pretty decent. I like writing scary stories, but his art is just crazy and mind-blowing, and so he did it in digital brilliantly, but then he actually converted it to print himself. So it's done very much lovingly with care. It's like very much a labor of love. So we did this 80-page story as a digital comic, which Marvel has reissued in print as a #0, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that came out this month. And then next month, kind of Halloween month, is #1, which starts a new arc. And we've got a new 4-issue sort of story starring Peter and putting him in a haunted house and lots of other scary situations. So.
I mean, maybe it's just me that I'm such an old man, but I mean, I'm more into the print than the digital. But it's like I was like, wait, this was in digital because I mean, it's such a great. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's like we're in an age where we get so much content now, which is good. But it's like I don't know if anyone can keep up with everything that comes out.
No, that's why. And anytime a company gives a story like a second dip in another format, it's like, thank God, because you almost need to reach the different audiences that prefer different formats. And so when they said they were going to do this in print, we were like, yes, cool. So, and a whole bunch of people are reading it that didn't read it digitally. So.
Oh yeah, because like I said, it escaped me, and because it's Spider-Man, I usually give anything Spider-Man a try, and I was like, oh wait, what is it? I heard it was digital first.
Yeah, and I love, I wrote Miles for 4 years. I appreciate the kind words about that. So I got very intimate with that young man's life. But I'm an old man also, and I grew up with Peter, and so like anytime I get a chance, I wrote a couple issues of Amazing last year, or maybe 2 years ago, maybe now. But anytime I get a chance to write a Peter story, I'm like all in. So yeah, this was awesome to do.
All right. Yeah, like I said, I love Spider-Man. I loved your work on Spider-Man. So I was excited when I heard that, yes, you were taking over Daredevil, because we got a new Daredevil #1. And very interesting, original take. I don't remember anyone ever doing this, that Matt Murdock is now a priest because you were kind of spinning off of what Chip Zdarsky was doing. Did I see somewhere that you guys had talks, and was it just like, okay, where are you leaving the character? I'll pick it up here. And
yeah, we talked a little bit about it. There's a kind of a fairly recent but long recent tradition in Daredevil of like one writer kind of putting the other writer in a fucked up. Sorry, I don't know what the rating on the show is. Messed up situation, and leaving them kind of like, how are you going to get Matt out of this, right? And it's become a cool, almost writer to writer challenge. And Daredevil's the writer's book, the creator's book, I should say. Let me not ignore artists in talking about that, because artists have always been a crucial part of these runs, right? And then Daredevil's been pretty lucky to have sustained runs of paired artist and writer, and it's the book where people are doing a superhero book, they're doing a Marvel comic, but you get to kind of be a little more grown up, maybe be a little bit more sophisticated with the storytelling, just do it in a little bit of a different way than, say, I've been, as I said, doing Miles Morales for 4 years, wrote Kamala Khan, plucky teen superheroes I love to death, but it's a different thing than like this broken guy Matt Murdock. And so the challenge becomes, after 40 years, how do how do you break him in new ways, right? And so so that was really, Chip. I mean, I saw somebody saying online, and I realized it's true. He had the longest consecutive run on the character, period, in his history. And so, Marco was there for almost all those issues. And so it was like, it's unparalleled. And I'm not into like the idea of following in footsteps and whatever. Like I'm telling my own story, but we definitely talked about like the idea. Well, now that the cat's out of the bag, right? I'm so used to talking this in secretive terms. I had a concept for Matt and a journey for Matt to kind of go on both kind of on the superhero level and the personal level. And Chip kind of came to me and said, okay, this is crazy, but like, I'm thinking the last issue, he might be a priest. Does that screw you over too much? And it was just like the perfect synchronicity with the storyline that I had lined up. And so it was like, it just felt a little meant to be, not to get too religious about it, but it felt a little hand of God-ish. So so it's we did talk a little bit, but you also, you're sort of it's kind of like, I don't know, when your siblings watching your kid or something. I don't know what the metaphor is, but like you just kind of you interfere a little bit, but you let them do their own thing. It's not going to be the same rules as when you're there, I don't know what the metaphor is, but there's a dance there, and I think that it's been really cool because Chip's just a great person, even though I fuck around and pretend that he's not, when we mess around on social media, but he's awesome, and it was a really one can imagine a much more difficult person to be taking over the book from, and so it was a very smooth handoff, and I think, thank God, it seems like people have reacted pretty positively to the handoff. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love that. I love the handoff method. I mean, as someone who's been reading for decades, I love when people come in and like they work with what's come before and don't try to like I mean, you put your own spin on it, but like you work with what's come before and everything, and it kind of like enriches the whole thing more. And like the whole thing with the priest thing, it's like I find this intriguing because it's like, people have gotten into, Matt's faith and how it's affected his life from childhood to now, but it's like I'm assuming you're going to get really into it because now that it's he's a priest, so it's really going to be
I mean, and of course he's Matt Murdock. We've already seen in the very first issue that he's not a conventional Catholic priest, right? For a little bit of world building, I guess people have been asking questions, and it'll all be there on the page. But the idea is that this institution that Matt's overseeing, St. Nicholas's Youth Home, sort of exists outside the conventional system. He and this other priest, Father Javi, seem to exist outside the normal hierarchy a little bit. And what we see a little bit in that first issue is that that's partially because Elektra's greasing the sort of bureaucratic gears with like money, intimidation, favors, whatever it is. She's making it happen so that they can do their thing in their own way. And so Matt won't be a conventional priest, and some people, it's like a fine line between telling a story that feels honest and earnest to the character and has real stakes and isn't like disrespecting people just unnecessarily and people's faith and their connection to their faith, which is something I take serious. I'm a Muslim, I'm not Catholic, but to me, a character who believes in God is a rare thing in the superhero universe, right? Regardless of what the denomination has to be. And so telling that kind of a story where this character is not just accountable to like the other Avengers, right? But they're accountable to like something higher than themselves, and they wonder, am I doing this right? I think that making him a literal man of the cloth was just like the most extreme way to to kind of get at that. So yeah, I think some people are thinking this is like just a one-off or something like that, but we're taking it seriously as a premise. So.
Is that like the freedom of like writing a Matt Murdock? Because I don't know if it's just because like with any of the Spider-Men, it's like they're kind of like a more protected, maybe like the brand is more protected, but like with Daredevil, they'll let you kind of like do your own thing kind of more.
Yeah, there's some of that. Hell's Kitchen is to a degree a bubble, but and again, tonally, it's just always been a little bit different, but at the same time, you do have to kind of still be playing in the same sandbox as everybody else, and it's so sometimes it's funny because you see people say, well, why did the writer make this decision, or why did the artist draw the thing this way? And sometimes that's got to do with all sorts of machinations that are happening behind the scenes that are connections to other things happening at Marvel. And you don't tip your cards, but you just sort of say, well, if you saw behind the scenes, you'd understand why we're making this decision versus that decision and stuff. But it's been pretty free-handed so far. Marvel's been pretty decent with like me coming to them with a crazy premise and Chip talking about ending on a crazy premise and them being pretty open to it. So and we're going some pretty wild places. Because the other benefit with a character like Matt, right, is because he's not quite a marquee character like Spidey, but people are going to buy his book unless I totally shit the bed, right? People are going to buy his book, and that gives you a bit of runway, right, to do some long-term storytelling, which is something that you can't always count on in this day and age with the market the way it is. And so we've got some really cool plans that we'll just like be planting seeds for now that people will see sort of kind of blossom into different kinds of things a year from now, 6 months from now, 3 months from now. So
big event, big storyline,
just little less event TM, like it's we're not doing things in that huge of a scope necessarily, although we are bringing in some other Marvel characters that we don't necessarily immediately associate with Matt, although they do have, everybody's got history with everybody in the Marvel universe, right? But we are bringing in a couple of people go, oh, cool, instead of like, oh, of course, they're waiting for, we've teased, right, in covers, et cetera, solicits that, of course, Bullseye will appear at some point, right? So with Bullseye, people are like, when is Bullseye going to come? When is Bullseye going to come? There are characters that they are not expecting to show up that will show up. And they'll feel like there's some ripples in the Marvel universe. But this is never going to be like big event book. It's going to be about personal stakes for Matt, and Elektra and, Foggy and the people in their circle, So telling that story of this little cast that almost feels like a drama, a human drama in a way that most Marvel comics don't, that they have other strengths, right? But it's awesome. It's awesome for storytelling. So,
and thank you for keeping Elektra. I was afraid maybe you weren't going to use Elektra like as much as Chip was, but it looks like you're planning to include her in your plans.
She'll be there. She is definitely, part of what you contend with when you come to a new book, right, is you look at what the last person did well and poorly, and you say, oh, I'm really good at this, or maybe a little better than they were, and then you look at other things and you go, I'm never going to be as good as they are at that, right? And I think writing Matt as a priest, one of the benefits of that is I don't think I'll ever be as good at Matt and Elektra's dynamic as Chip is, but at least until I've spent some more time in Matt's head thinking about this, right? And so they'll be connecting, but part of what I'm going to have happening in those early issues is a kind of absent presence, right? Matt's making a decision that kind of shocks Elektra in issue 1, right? She's kind of like, the superhero shit happens all the time, right? You got rebooted, your brain. Okay, now let's go back to like, you're not a priest anymore. And he's like, God did this to me. This isn't just like, superhero nonsense of the week. And so we have to take it seriously because Matt does. I hope we take it seriously. And that means that Elektra's a little baffled right now. There's going to be a little bit of distance between them. But, that character has like always been, I love her to death. So she will be, again, when we talk about these sort of middle term and long term plans, I will never be taking my eyes off of Elektra.
And again, you said behind the scenes stuff. Does that include? I know Elektra is going to be showing up in the Spider-Man gang war towards the end of the year. So do they tell you you might have to pull back on Elektra a little bit, maybe?
No, it's almost the opposite. It's almost like we talked about like kind of how to give her a little bit more of a spotlight as Daredevils, to be very clear to everybody, right? Like this is the Spider-Man gang war series that's coming up is going to involve a kind of connection, and again, it'll never feel like you have to read one to read the other, but there's it's cool connective tissue if you do read both. And the gang war mini series that's starring Elektra it's just going to be I've already read the scripts for it. It's awesome, and it's connecting to threats in the main Daredevil book, and it's really about her being Daredevil full on in her kind of mini again, and there's space for that in her own book that there isn't if you're sort of reintroducing people to Matt in a new way. It's not that there can't be in the middle and long term for the main Daredevil book, but the emphasis really is on Matt, his soul, those first few issues. And so I hope people will be patient, because of course we're thinking about all of these guys, Foggy, Stick, everybody, it's like, I grew up with those formative runs where all of this Matt's kind of now canonical cast really got fleshed out by Miller and Vicente, all those guys, and so I'm going to be tapping into all of that stuff.
Yeah, I love Daredevil. I mean, I that would just be, I don't know, my head would explode. I'd be like, okay, do I want to go in the ninja? Do I want to take a full ninja, or do I want to keep it on the street? Like just like gangsters and but no, I know my co-host Lilith and I, we're always screaming because I know Elektra got a mini series during Devil's Reign, and now she's getting one during Gang War. We're like, we need a monthly Elektra book.
Hey, everybody buy the mini. Honestly, that's how
I always say. Yeah, just vote with your money. Yeah.
So.
Give it to Saladin. Let him write
if that first issue of Daredevil Gang War sells crap loads, then I guarantee you Marvel will be talking to Erica Schultz, who's writing it, like, let's do this.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of how it works, and that's the bizarre thing about storytelling in an environment like this, right? Is you can think about like what's the purest, perfect story to tell for that character, but that's never going to be quite tellable, because you always have to balance it with the commercial reality, which changes from month to month, year to year, editor to editor, and so I like that dance. I don't mind that dance. I like, I almost like kind of trying to color in the lines weirdly, obsessively, but it is a dance. And so part of Elektra staying in the costume, to be quite frank, is people love her in that costume. If everybody in the world, and you can't judge us by just like random toxic corners of the internet, right? You have to look at what do people buy, right? And people buy Elektra in the Daredevil costume, right? They pay money for it. So if they keep doing it, we'll keep seeing her in it probably. What will happen a year, 2 years down the line, who knows? I think there's lots of great stories to tell with her. My dad was a comics collector, believe it or not, and he's getting up there in years, and he was recently like, "Hey, I want you to take these boxes of comics out of my house, right?" And it was just a few long boxes that he'd kind of stripped down to over the years from the 80s when he was collecting, and I was like maybe 10, 11, 12 at the time, reading his stuff, some of which I shouldn't have been, right? But there's a pristine, bagged and boarded #1 of Elektra Assassin with the Sinkowitz cover. Like, yes. so yeah, she'll always be on my radar.
But so internet chatter is nice, but so the #1 thing is vote with our money. So
it's very true. It's very true. And the shops, because of comics, it's not like a Barnes and Noble or a Dick's Sporting Goods it's a network of local shops, and so people know, the people who own these shops know what people love. They talk to real people, and it's it's cool. It's cool. And I think that it can be rough when people don't love what you're doing, right? But when you feel like you've connected and hit that sweet spot for folks, it's awesome. So and thank God people seem to be into what we're doing so far, and we'll see if they keep being into it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, I love the story. The art is great. Reminds me, it's like I'm like, this is gonna be a classic Daredevil run. Just the art, it's
Aaron. I'm sorry. I got to wax about Aaron because I haven't done it yet, and we're like 15 minutes in, so I've waxed. But yeah, Aaron Cooter has been like just insane. Like the level of care. Marvel hires professional artists. You always expect a certain level of professionalism. People are going to deliver, but there's different levels of like people feeling like they're like invested in something, and like really thinking about these panels that they're drawing, and you understand not everybody can do that. It's a brutal pace to write monthly comics, and I don't think people on the other end of it understand just how much is expected of artists in particular. I won't whine as a writer, but as artists, how quickly they have to turn out pages, and it can crush people. So it's very easy to just kind of go on automatic, right? And Aaron is not on automatic. He is like just weaving in and out of lanes in a Ferrari on manual. He's killing it. And so I'm excited for people to see kind of what he's doing here.
I mean, it's a nice shift from the last team to this team. I mean, the art is just, I mean, to create something that's on that level of Marco. It's just like, oh my god, it's none of the quality writing or art has. I don't think has slipped at all. So it's.
I appreciate that.
Yes. But so you were talking about the pace, like how the industry these days is like how many books, like on average, how many books do you do at once? Like,
well, I'm a bit of a weirdo because I work in other things besides just comics, and so like for instance, I'm doing I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, a DC podcast, Batman audio series for Spotify, for instance. I'm always doing like 2-3 different things at once, but you're very rarely. I think people imagine because one issue of a comic comes out a month that you're just sitting there at a leisurely pace, just writing that one issue, and that's all you're doing. And no, no, you're keeping like 8 storylines for like 4 different projects in mind at once is, somehow when you have ADHD, especially, it's like, hey, so, the fact that you managed to do it at all, I think, is impressive. So, and artists even more so. I mean, they're really putting their bodies on the line writing. It sounds crazy, but it really is true. Like when you're just doing that all day, like it takes a physical toll that like, it's nuts. So, when you guys see like a panel where you're like, oh, why does this guy's nose look terrible in this panel? And like, just understand that's like, that's the reality of stuff made by human beings, and hopefully we still all want art made by human beings.
yes. So like when you're doing different things, do you have to like compartmentalize? Like, okay, Monday I have to, it's just Daredevil. Tuesday it's just the Batman Spotify thing. Is that
absolutely. Yep, I got like week by week blocked out. It tends to be something like a comic a week, a script a week, something like that. And depending, it's very, very rough. And it does have to be like switch brain gears. I can't really usually switch from one to the other in the same day, and especially working on Batman and Daredevil at the same time, because they're both angsty guys on rooftops with beating people up. So you got to kind of like, okay, no, this is Matt, this is Bruce.
Does something pop in your head and be like, I don't know if this will work for Batman, but it might work for Daredevil?
That hasn't happened yet. No, I think they do in my mind, and part of it's because they're different formal things. It's the audio drama versus the comics. They exist so far in pretty different worlds. And I actually, as jokey as I am about it, I actually get mad when people are like, in Daredevil's Marvel's Batman, because Matt's so different. Matt's like Bruce has had this one massive tragedy at the center of his life, but has had every hand up in every other sense almost. And Matt has just like been beat down again and again by life. And they're in very different places when they're standing on that rooftop, So, I love Matt Murdock. I love writing him. I love, since I was like a little kid, before I ever read the comics, and I had a Marvel with a metal, because there were metal back in the day, Marvel lunchbox, right, with like all the kind of Silver Age art on there, and it was like, and there was Daredevil right there, like bright red, and like it was just. The suit's great. Matt's a great character. The power set is great. The backstory is great. So I think most creators, when they get to this book, they're like, yes, fun, so.
Oh yeah. I was just about to ask you something and it just slipped right out of my head. Is there a pressure, especially for you, because you have written the character? I mean, are people already knocking down your door saying, when's Spider-Man going to show up in this book? When's Spider-Man going to show up in this book? Either way, any of them, was when's Spider-Man going to show up?
Thankfully, no. People, I feel like Matt's fans, his hardcore fans, are like, they live in mostly that corner. I mean, they might like other Marvel stuff, but like they don't necessarily want their chocolate and their peanut butter mixed up or whatever. So, and there are some cool Marvel cameos coming. Not even cameos, some guest spots, I guess you'd say. Almost in the old school, Bronze Age, Silver Age tradition. But I hope they're all earned. They're all kind of connected to Matt's character in the main plot and stuff like that. So, and Spidey has such baggage with him, and he's such a big name that if he does show up in this book, it's probably not going to be anytime soon.
Okay. I'm sure you'll probably be like, oh no, but
unless Marvel calls me tomorrow and says Spidey's in the book, and then you go, yeah, okay, Spidey's in the book, because that's also how this works. But again, with Matt, part of the joy is that they typically don't do that much. So,
and I mean, again, the character's profile is up because there were the Netflix seasons, and the character appeared on She-Hulk, and now he's getting another series. Like, you don't get any behind the scenes of any even just like small details of what that show's going to be like, do you?
If I wanted to snoop, I probably could, but I've always been like I was like this with Miles in the movies. Is like I just I don't want to. I just want to tell my own story here, not get kind of tainted, I guess. Not see something that's way smarter than what I came up with and be sad, or something that I'm like, oh no, don't do that, but you have no control over. Either of those is terrible, right? So I mostly don't watch them often until they come out, or until even much later sometimes, and so people will be like, come up with, at a signing, right? And they'll be like, well, what did you think in season? And I'm like, this is my horrific confession here, that I didn't finish the Netflix Daredevil, actually. So, and it wasn't because there was any reason to stop. It was because I'm like a squirrel with my attention span, and so I got onto something else, and I'll need to start over from the beginning now, and which I'm going to do before we get to the new Born Again coming out, I guess 2024. See, so I obviously don't have the inside info. The fact that I'm asking you that, but they're separate worlds, and for me to come to it 6 months later and be like, hey, just sit down and watch a story. And by then, I'm often not working on the same character, because that's how this business works, or you're way in a different place with that character. It feels like a nicer remove, I think, you don't ever want to feel like, I don't know, the streams are crossed too much to feel comfortable, because we're all telling lots of stories with these characters in lots of different media, whether it's PlayStation game, animated movie, podcasts, and I think we all, generally, people working in media, are like cool about not stepping on each other's toes, getting in each other's way about that, or snooping into each other's business too much, I guess.
So, you kind of mentioned it, but like, can you sit down and enjoy like a Miles Morales movie, or are you just like, okay, you see the threads, you see the writing behind the rest of us don't see, and you're just like, okay.
A little bit. The Miles movies have been so good that hasn't been new. But and also I have 13-year-old kids, so I was kind of like, and they were like, whatever, 10 or whatever when the first movie came out, and so was sort of like perfectly poised to enjoy those kind of as a family movie. But there are a lot of things that I'll watch, and I don't watch every single Marvel or DC movie or show, because first of all, you can't. And second of all, a lot of times, I just want to have a little bit of distance, and I like other stuff. I mostly play video games, honestly, these days. So, yeah.
Do you like any of the Marvel video games, or are you something else?
Yes. No, I did. The Spider-Man game was, and this is before I was working on Miles, if I remember correctly, that first Spider-Man game came out, the Peter one, and it was such a joy. It was a blast of a game, and the Guardians of the Galaxy game was really great too. So, which is not set of guys I've ever worked on, so I had no like connection there.
So yeah, I mean, I've seen your list. You've worked on. I mean, again, you've ticked off some of the big ones: Spider-Man, Daredevil. I mean, you're working on a Batman thing. Is there any character you had? Who's the one character or team book like you would love to write that you haven't written yet?
It's funny because again, like I think I've started to think of that question a little too realistically, probably, right? Like when you're like just getting started in the industry, or even more so when you're like a fan, right? You're like, I know the perfect storyline for this character. I got to, I got to tell my Ant-Man story, whatever it is. You kind of come up against the realities of like, well, who do they need a book about at what point, and where is that character at, and so on and so on. And when I always thought like my Marvel book when I was writing, because before I wrote comics, I was writing like short stories, novels, etc. And Marvel kind of recruited me off of that. And when they first talked to me, my pitch was a Crusher Creel book, right? Because I always wanted to tell like Crusher Creel like in a supervillain prison book, right? And I was like, yes, I have a perfect. They're like, do you have any ideas for stories? I'm like, yes, Crusher Creel. They're like, we're not doing a solo Crusher Creel book, sorry, because it's sales driven. It is the brutal reality these days, and so that book would not sell tons. Not like, hey, but almost as obscure. They were like, hey, Black Bolt, right? And so I was like, yes, cool. Love the Inhumans, they're weirdos, and then I snuck Crusher Creel into that book, so I made it a prison book anyway. So, but what that taught me was kind of like that you can have your ideal pitch. Like, I'd love to do a Superman thing someday. I'd love to. I sneak Steve Rogers into basically every comic I write at some point. So to give a speech, I was like I think there's 3 different speeches that I've had Steve give like at this point. And, so I could see doing that book at some point, but I've not yet had like the idea, right? Like with Matt, right? When you have these Marvel meetings and people talk to each other, different things get thrown around, who wants to do what. And I've never reached for Daredevil because I've never had a great Matt concept, but I was noodling on one that felt a little bit like it might be cool. And that connected with, I'm sorry, I'm getting annoying messages on my computer here. And that connected with kind of like, me having this idea of Marvel reaching out. That kind of synergy has to happen to feel like you're going to tell a cool story. So I guess it'd be Cap on the Marvel side, Superman on the DC side. But I also I do miss doing team books too. I wrote the Exiles, for like a brief dozen issues, and I miss that. I miss that dynamic of some of my indie work at Image has kind of played on some of those dynamics. But I love a squad of different personalities kind of interacting, loving each other, bickering. So I could see myself doing a big team book at either place eventually.
And I mean, it could. I mean, that's kind of, if you do a team book, that can be kind of a cheat sheet too. Say you do an Avengers, you can have a Captain. You can have your Captain America, you can have your Iron Man, you can have your Thor.
Yeah. Similarly, I've not yet thought of like what's my awesome Avengers pitch, right? But if and when I do, I will go to Marvel and be like, here's my awesome Avengers pitch, and if they agree, then then we'll do it.
All right. I think I'm pretty much out of questions. What else are you working? I mean, we mentioned the Daredevil, we mentioned Spine-Tingling Spider-Man's coming soon, the Batman Spotify thing. Is there anything else you're working on?
Yeah, we do have a couple Image books going with an artist named Dave Acosta. I have a book called Terrorwar. We're on like issue 5. Don't quote me on that at this point. And it's a kind of sci-fi horror book, like 80s movie nerd here. So Aliens meets Blade Runner meets a little bit of Ghostbusters actually stuff. So the star of that book is the art though. Dave is a genius basically. So, and then I'm also doing another Image book at the same time because I'm insane. And with the artist Megan Levins, kind of in the opposite direction, almost sort of young adulty kind of team-ish superhero book called Starsigns. It's about different characters that get the powers of the astrological signs, modern day stuff, sort of early X-Men / Heroes kind of inspired team book. So those image books are going monthly right now, and doing the Marvel thing. Spine-Tingling Spider-Man issue 1 hits October. Daredevil number 2 hits October. And then there's always like secret things in the works. So
See, you made it sound like you're really working on like one comic book and like one podcast. I knew you had more in
it's you know,
I mean, that seems to be the thing anymore. I mean, the more successful the name, they have like 20 20.
Well, it's not a mistake. You know, it's not a mistake. You gotta just be throwing everything you can out there to make it stick, to make a living. It's it's a job. Thank God I've done much worse, much harder jobs. And this is literally my dream job, but it's still a job. So yeah, we're working, but hopefully you guys are loving what we make while we work. So.
And again, if you love it, vote with your dollar. Again, or the most important message: vote with your money, kids. Vote with your dollars.
Yes.
If you ever want to do an interview about the Batman Spotify thing, I also do a Batman podcast. So
let's do it.
Yes.
I don't think they've announced a date yet, but they have announced that. Okay. So we did a season 1, which was Batman Unburied. I was a staff writer on that. I became showrunner for this next season, which is actually Riddler focused. It's called Riddler Seasons in the Dark. We've got Hassan Minaj is playing the Riddler, and I don't think they've announced a date yet for that, but that'll be dropping probably sometime this year. I think probably late fall. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. And then so when that comes out, we should talk.
Yes, definitely. Just let me know again, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're a friend of the show now, so if you ever want to come on and promote, you have my email. Just send it to me. Don't worry. Just send it to me. We'll make time. So
sounds like
all right, everyone. The great Saladin Ahmed.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, kids. Yes, the great Saladin Ahmed. If you have not read Daredevil number 1, yes, you still have time before Daredevil number 2. So yeah, go pick that up. So grateful he had the time for me, because I know Lilith is still on vacation, but I said if nothing else, I will do a review by myself, but luckily I didn't have to, because Saladin was kind enough to share his time. And once again, just like most of the people we talked to, he has 20 projects going at once. So if you listen to this later, Saladin, thank you so much for your time. And so next month, Lilith will be back. So we will talk Daredevil. We'll do a review of some old stuff, Daredevil 220 and 221. And I'm sure we'll talk about the new issues, which will be Daredevil 2 and anything else Daredevil. All right. So again, if send us your thoughts on Daredevil. Again, send us your thoughts on the new Daredevil, or heck, if you're a writer, it doesn't even have to be Daredevil. I mean, we do enough Marvel and DC and others. So if you're a comic creator and you want to come on and talk, whatever. If you're a listener, you have questions. If you're a writer or an artist, you want to come on and chat, email us, CapesandLunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And remember, you can find everything Capes and Lunatics episodes, social media, merchandise, links to our Patreon. You never know what you're going to get. Lilith Hellfire's Drunken reviews, movie reviews, just whatever we can come up with, some extra content for our subscribers. So join our Patreon elite with the likes of Russell, Ray, Justin, and Moz. So find that all of that at tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. All right. So again, thank you for joining us. And again, thank you so much, Saladin, for sharing your time with me. All right, kids. So yes, next month, Lilith will be back. Cover some old stuff. We'll cover the new stuff, including Daredevil number 2. And we'll get Lilith's thoughts on Daredevil number 1. And yes, I believe I saw today the writers strike is almost over or over. So hopefully our Daredevil Born Again TV show, it hasn't been delayed too much. So, because remember, kids, Lil said we might start doing more than once a month again once that TV show starts. So, might get some more, might get some good Daredevil TV and more Devil You Knows than once a month again. All right, kids. But yes, like I said, pick up the new Daredevil by Saladin, and again, Spine-Tingling Spider-Man. If you haven't read the digital stuff, they collected it, and number 1 is coming soon. All right. So join me and Lilith next time. Remember, it's better to be with the devil you know than the devil you don't, and she'll be back next time.